Today we are going to be looking at graphing functions, and so let's take a look at some of the problems that we might end up experiencing on the homework. And the first one gives us an equation of y equals the opposite of x plus 2. I say the opposite because that's what we're going to end up doing when we substitute the inputs into this expression here. And so this minus sign again in front of the x, think of it as the opposite of x. And so it depends on what x is. So for instance here we have negative 2 as our x value. But I'm not going to write negative 2 because I need to take the opposite of the x value, which is the opposite of negative 2. So I'm going to write down 2 plus 2 because again I bring down the plus 2 here, but the opposite of negative 2 is positive 2. So when I go ahead and do that work, I end up with 4, and I write the ordered pair, negative 2 comma 4. Put parentheses around it, representing an ordered pair. So again, as I do these problems, I always try to do one step in my head, and then I write down the problem, and then do the second step after I write it down. And so I'll do that here. The opposite of negative 1. So I'm plugging negative 1 in for x, but then taking its opposite, and that's why I'm getting positive 1. Plus 2 gives me 3. So I write the ordered pair down, negative 1 comma 3. And taking a look at the next one, fix that one, make it look a little more clear. And the next one, we're going to end up putting in 0. So let me go ahead and rewrite this one again, negative 1 comma 3. So we're going to plug 0 in for x. Well, 0 has no opposite, so it's just going to be 0. 0 plus 2 gives me 2. And so I'll write that ordered pair as 0 comma 2. And then the next one, well, now I have some positives. So when I put a positive in for x, the opposite of a positive is going to be a negative. So I'm going to have negative 1 plus 2, and that's going to give me positive 1. So 1 comma 1. And now I'm plugging 2 in for x. The opposite of 2 is negative 2. Negative 2 plus 2 gives me 0. So I write the ordered pair as 2 comma 0. Now I've got my ordered pairs. I'm going to graph my equation. So remembering what we talked about before about the different quadrants and the axes. Here's my x-axis. Here's my y-axis. And since it is a negative 2 comma 4, I go in the x direction, negative 2. So I go to the left 2 spaces. Y is 4, so I go up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I just put a dot. And I continue on. So negative 1, 3 means I go over 1 space to the left and up 3 spaces. And then 0, 2, I go over 0 and then up 2. And then 1 comma 1, I go over 1, up 1 space. And then 2 comma 0, I go over 2 and then up 0. Once I have those points, I can go ahead and sketch a line between them. So I'm just drawing the line that goes through those points. And I'll stick some arrows at the end showing that the line continues on in those directions, up to the left and down to the right forever. So let's take a look at the next one. A little bit different. This time instead of a opposite of 2, it's 2 times x. So this just means 2 times your input or your x value. And then I'm going to take away 2. So I'm going to do one step in my head again. Negative 2 times 2. I like to do one step and then write down the next step. So negative 2 times by 2 makes negative 4, and then I'm taking away 2. So notice I did that in my head. Negative 2 in for x, and I times 2, because that's the number in front, by the x value, I got negative 4. And now when I take 2 from negative 4, I get negative 6. Remember, same sign add. That's a little rule we talked about before. Same sign add. And that's what we got. So negative 2 comma negative 6 is the ordered pair there. And I'm just going to move this graph over so I've got enough room to do the problem. And let's take a look at our next one. I'm going to plug in negative 1 for x, do the work in my head. So 2 times negative 1 gives me negative 2, and then take away 2. Again, I got the same sign, so I'm adding those two numbers, makes negative 4. So negative 1 comma negative 4. Next one, 0 in for x. That makes 0. 0 times 2 is 0. Minus 2 gives me negative 2. So 0 comma negative 2. And the second to last, I'll put in a 1 for x. 2 times 1 makes 2. Minus 2 gives me 0. So 1 comma 2. And then 2 in for x. 2 times 2 gives me 4. And then 4 minus 2 gives me 2. So 2 comma 2. I like doing, instead of substituting the number in and then trying to multiply, it takes up less space in this work category if you could do one step in your head, and I think you'll have more success there. So let's go ahead and plot these points. So we've got -2, -6. So in our x-axis, we're going to go -2 spaces to the, or 2 spaces to the left, and then up or down because it's negative. Our y-axis goes up and down. -6 means down 6 spaces. And then -4 means over 1 to the left, and then down 4 spaces. And then 0, -2 means over 0, and then down 2. And then 1 comma 2 means over, let's see here, actually that shouldn't have been a 2 there. Let's go ahead and fix that. I got a 0 for y when I plugged in the 1, so let's go ahead and fix that right now. 1 comma 0 was this point. So when I plugged in 1 for x, multiplied it by 2, minus 2 gave me 0. So we'll go ahead and go over 1, then up 0. And then I go 2 comma 2, so over 2 spaces and then up 2 spaces. And then I can go ahead and draw the line between those points. So I'll draw that line and extend that line just a little past those points, and showing that it goes on forever is the arrows, signifies that. And that's graphing some lines. Let's take a look at the next set of problems that we'll end up seeing. Here we have Ed earns $25 per hour. So whenever I see per hour, each hour, this typically gives me my variable term. So I know the variable is going to be attached to $25, and the unknown is going to be hours. And this is going to be an unknown because it depends on the number of hours that we're going to end up using it. So that's why they had the x right there. So 25 times x. And that's going to give us y, and y is going to end up being in dollars. Because what we're going to end up doing is multiplying the $25 per hour by the number of hours, and it's going to give us an amount of money. And that's what it says here. When it says, this shows the equation, amount of money earned is y, Ed worked in x hours. So we're going to go ahead and fill in the chart that we have here. So $25 per hour times 0 hours. Well, obviously, if he doesn't work, he's not making any money. If he works 1 hour, we multiply 25 times 1 gives us $25. If he works 2 hours, multiply 25 times by 2, it gives us $50. If he goes and works 3 hours, he's got himself $75. And 4 hours, can't think of quarters, makes $1, so that'd be $100. So that's the equation, that's the chart. Let's go ahead and fill in the graph. So hours worked is on the x-axis, as we said. This represents our x-axis. And the y-axis is money earned. So if he does not work, he does not make money. If he works 1 hour, he makes $25. So over 1, up 25. Over 2, he makes $50. If he works 3 hours, well, that's 75, it said. And 4 hours gives him $100. And so I'll just draw the line between those points. And from that point, we'll go ahead and fill in the rest of the answers here. And so the next question asks us, is the relation a function? Well, we have to go back to what we learned before. And a relation's a function if the inputs have only one output, and that's what we have here. So let's state that. So we'll say, yes, the relation is a function, and the reason is because each input has one, or exactly one output. And moving on to the next one, it says, how will Ed earn, or how much will Ed earn after working 5 hours? Well, 5 hours, it's not on the chart, but 5 would be over here, so it would be up above $100. Well, the fast way of finding this would be this. Let's go ahead and substitute it into our equation. Y equals the amount made. $25 is the rate. If he works 5 hours, if I multiply 5 hours times $25, that's going to give me $125. Now, don't just write $125 and say that's your answer. Let's write a sentence for that. So we'll say Ed earns or will earn $125 after working 5 hours. And looking at the next one, it says about how much will he earn after 2.5 hours. Well, 2 hours is $50. 2.5 would be right here. And if I carry it up and then over, and I'll change color here so you can see that a little bit better. See, if I carry it up and then over, that's the amount of money right here. It's right in between 50 and 75. And again, we can find that out by just plugging it in. $25 times 2.5. Well, 2.5 is the same thing as 2.5. So basically all I'm doing is I'm doubling 2, which gives me 50, and I'm taking half of 25, which is actually 12.5. And so again, if you needed to multiply it out, you can always do this. Multiply it out this way, and come up with the same answer. And then when we go ahead and do that, I end up with $62.50. Remember, you have to move that decimal point over one space because I multiplied by that one decimal point. So let's go ahead and, oops, this is dollars. Yes, that's right, $62.50. So we'll say Ed will earn $62.50 after working 2.5 hours. Well, the last one says, well, if he earns $2,500 in a month, how many hours did he work? Well, it's kind of the opposite, and so we've always been substituting numbers in for x. Now we're given a y value, so let's do that. So y equals 2,500. He earns $25 an hour. We're trying to find the value of x. So we're just going to do an opposite operation. I'm going to divide by 25. And when I do that, 25 goes into 2,500 one time with 2 zeros left over, so that's 100 hours. So what I'd say is, if Ed works 100 hours, he'll earn $2,500. Well, those are the problems that we'll end up seeing on tonight's homework. Good luck.